Hey folks, this is Kelani, and one of the newer types of content being introduced in Battle for Azeroth is the Warfronts, which we really didn't know all that much about. We have a rough idea of what the goal is, how the Warfronts themselves might end up working, and where the first Warfronts take place. Our first Warfront is in Arathi Highlands, where each faction vies for control over Stromgarde. Warfronts seem to be the storytelling device for areas where the Horde and Alliance are clashing. Arathi Highlands is the key choke point to try and prevent more Alliance reinforcements coming north, and it's also a key staging point for the Alliance in their attempt to banish the Horde from the Eastern Kingdoms altogether. So we might end up seeing more Warfronts in places like Ash and Valar Darkshore, and maybe even on Zandalar and Kul Tiras in the future. The way Warfronts work is very similar to the Warcraft RTS games. Each faction has a base, you can then capture certain areas of the map to help produce iron and lumber, you can passively and actively gather both of these resources to help build your base, recruit troops, and push back against the opposite faction. It's a big game of Warcraft, and you're one of the soldiers instead of the overseer. You can contribute your resources towards the construction of new buildings which allow you to recruit troops, upgrade troops, or use special powers, so it works kind of like the Broken Shore buildings because you all have to work as a group to get your stuff built. If everyone contributes to different buildings, it's going to take a while to get going, and you have 20 players in this new form of content, so hopefully at least a few of you will work together. The goal of a Warfront is to take the enemy base of operations and kill their leader, which might sound easy, but the opposite faction always starts a little bit ahead of you, and if at any time you thought this would be really cool and exciting as PvP content, I'm going to have to disappoint you. It's currently PvE only for now, so the opposite faction is made up entirely of NPCs, but I guess that's why it's fine for them to start a little bit ahead of you. Hopefully we get a PvP option later on, because I think Warfronts would work fantastically as an upgraded battleground of sorts, but that's what we already knew for the most part. But the last beta build introduced a lot of extra goodies which blows the Warfront system way past what I thought it was going to be. Previously, we didn't know how Warfronts were going to be activated or made available. Well, there's a new chunk of user interface on the world map which can only be seen by max level players, Warfront Battle for Stromgarde. It currently shows as active, but over the last day or so it's been working its way up to 100%, just like the Broken Shore buildings. It was completed way faster than I expected it to be, but that's probably because we're on beta. I wouldn't be surprised if they sped things up so we could get some real testing in. This entire process might end up taking closer to 3 or 4 days, just like the Broken Shore buildings when they first came out. So that means Warfronts won't always be available, but when they are available they should be up for a few days. The interesting part is that this Warfront is supposed to be the Alliance and the Horde in sort of a tug of war, so right now it's active for the Horde, so it's probably in the contributions phase for the Alliance. When they reach 100% they'll take it back from the Horde, and they'll have access to the Warfront for a few days, so we trade it back and forth until the end of time, or until we get bored of this Warfront, I guess. That's the general idea from what we've seen on the beta anyways. It could end up being different by the time everything is fully implemented and it goes live. So how do you contribute to the Warfront effort? You have quite a few options actually. There's a whole bunch of daily quests in the areas surrounding the Warfront NPCs. It's kind of like the opening of Anchorage. Now sadly you can't see them on my screen because as soon as we hit 100% all of the dailies disappeared. We'll touch on that a bit later. These dailies allow you to contribute almost anything related to professions towards the Warfront setup. There's an NPC for pretty much every profession who will ask for a certain ore, certain food, specific potions or scrolls, and they also change every day. There's also a daily where you can contribute 100 gold, which sounds like pennies compared to what most players have. This might end up being increased, but if you want to fork over some coin to help things go faster, you're more than welcome to do so. You can only contribute with professions or gold once per day, so if you hand over ore, you can't also hand over herbs. If you hand over gold, you also can't do any of the profession related stuff. This also gives me a reason to believe that the gold value will be increased quite dramatically. 100 gold versus 60 ore or herbs is an easy choice. No one will end up contributing with profession materials if that gold value stays the same, so I think we'll see a significant change there. If the gold value is increased, this could end up being really interesting, because not only does this serve as a means to make the Warfront special events, which aren't active 24/7, it's also a huge material sink for professions. We didn't really have anything like that in Legion except the odd world quest or two, which are also still in the game, but this is something that everyone with a profession will be actively contributing to. That's a huge amount of materials which are basically just disappearing, which should help those materials keep a steady value in the months after launch. Prices should be far more stable than they otherwise would be at the start of an expansion. The same goes for war campaign resources, which you can also contribute with a special repeatable quest. So many people were sat on a huge stockpile of order hall resources because we just didn't have anywhere decent to spend them. Now you can fork over 100 war campaign resources as many times as you like to help the Warfront progress faster. This could end up being a really important decision, which impacts way more than just the Warfront system, but I digress. You can help the progress with professions, with gold, or with resources. But what about contribution rewards? I'm forking over a good chunk of gold here. What else do I get besides watching a percentage go up slightly? Well, actually quite a lot. Right now the rewards on the beta will raise the contribution percentage, award you with 750 Azerite, which is quite a good chunk, and increase your reputation with the Honor Bound or the 7th Legion by 500. That's kind of crazy, so much so that I think that will also get changed before this goes live. Unless war campaign resources are going to be very sparse, I doubt they would let you fork them over repeatedly for 500 rep a piece, or for 750 Azerite, which would level up your amulet ridiculously fast. So maybe this will end up being incredibly lucrative to take part in, or maybe the rewards will change. Either way, you should expect some Azerite as well as some rep with your PvP-ish faction. So as I mentioned earlier, the dailies disappeared when we reached 100% and the Warfront became active. It would seem like these contributions are only available while you don't have access to the Warfront. That's something we're definitely going to have to pay attention to. Thankfully, this looks like it's on a region basis instead of a server basis, just like the Broken Shore stuff, so faction imbalance won't ever be an issue. With the factions trading it back and forth, we should probably end up with about 50% uptime on the Warfront and then 50% uptime on the contribution rewards, unless they introduce some forced downtime between the faction swap. I think this first Warfront will be available for the Horde first because they would be attacking Stromgarde first. The next Warfront will probably end up going to the Alliance first, and then when that happens we should always have one active for the Horde and one active for the Alliance. That should also give you the option to contribute to something constantly because one will be active while the other isn't. So maybe the problem of not being able to contribute while the Warfront is active is just a temporary issue which will be addressed by adding in more Warfronts. I wonder how many we'll end up getting altogether. That could be fun at the end of an expansion to see which Warfronts you want to contribute to each day. I hope we get quite a few. Warfronts seem like they're going to be a lot of fun. Okay, so how do we get into the Warfront once it's become active? Well, you actually need to head on down to Arathi Highlands itself, but don't worry, you won't have to go the long way around. Hopefully. You should be able to find a portal nearby which will take you straight there. If the portal isn't active, the portal NPC might still teleport you anyways if you're on the right quest. If you can't teleport at all, you might end up getting stuck with the long way. Once you get there for the first time, you'll need to complete an introductory quest which shows you how the Warfront works. There's outposts you can take over and resource nodes where you can collect lumber and iron. After running around and making sure you know where everything is, you can head back to the Warfronts area and hand in the quest to unlock your very first Warfront. You can use the tables you queue up for Warfronts, and from there you just have to wait for your team to be assembled. The Warfront itself is pretty simple, as I said before. You start by retaking your base from the opposite faction, then you have to build everything up while defending against waves of Alliance forces, or Horde forces if you're playing from the Alliance. You need to balance defending your current areas and striking out to take over new outposts. You also want to capture the mine for some iron generation, and you can cut down as much lumber as you can carry and then start building your buildings. You get a bunch of different bonuses for each building, like recruiting troops to head out into the battlefield, upgrade your troops' damage, stack buffs on yourself, and just generally play an RTS game. Outposts provide you with a variety of bonuses too, like allowing you to recruit better troops, and so you can push forward to the enemy base. When you upgrade your main building to a fortress, you'll end up getting a bunch of resources passively too, so be sure to check back at your base to pick those up every now and then, recruit a few troops, and then join the fray once more. This is going to be really fun with an organised group of players, just so you can all work together to achieve the same goals at the same time, instead of everyone just running off and doing their own thing, hoping it all works out at the end. I really hope we see some difficulty options for Warfront as well. I feel like a really hard mode would be a lot of fun with serious players, just to overcome the challenge. Chances are you're going to win your Warfront eventually, as long as you don't lose every single base all at once and as long as everybody doesn't leave. So if you're able to get into the Warfront, you'll eventually end up winning. That's how it's designed. It's not really a back and forth adventure like you would expect from a battleground, so who knows if we'll get that PvP mode or not. But it's a lot of fun in my opinion. I'm excited to sink my teeth into it when it's finally on live servers. But Arathi Highlands has a bit more to it than just the Warfront. When your faction controls the zone, you will see a huge military presence there. You'll know the Alliance currently holds these lands, or the Horde has succeeded in taking them for the time being. That's going to make it so much easier to get a few other things done, like hunting down and killing all of the rare mobs which are active in the max level Arathi Highlands. The rares might end up being on a daily or weekly lockout too, so this could end up being a good place to farm for resources or other goodies. So not only do you have access to the Warfront itself, but special outdoor content to go along with it. Obviously this will also swap between factions. It's not just the small area around Stromgarde either. The entire zone has leveled up and you can find rares everywhere. I'm really excited to see what this will evolve into and how often we'll find ourselves in these Warfronts areas. I'm even more excited to see more Warfronts added so we can get more of this kind of stuff. Though I do wonder how many we'll actually end up getting at this rate. A Warfront seems to be a lot more content than what I first thought it could or would be. There's even a world boss in Arathi, one for the Horde and one for the Alliance. The world bosses are only up for the faction who has control of the zone though. The Alliance can take on Doom's Howl, while the Horde will have to dismantle the Lion's Roar. Both are huge siege engines, so that should prove to be a fun fight. So professions are going to play a key part in starting up the Warfronts. Access to Warfronts will swap between factions periodically, and there's also some open world content in the Warfront zone which isn't entirely tied to the Warfront. Not bad for a feature that not many people were expecting much of. What do you think about Warfronts with all the pieces of the puzzle on the board? What other zones would make for perfect Warfronts? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. If you want to hop on that train, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.